The brain, the gut, the heart, and the nervous system are being shown to be the predictors of our health. If having real health is of interest to you, please listen to learn more, and welcome to the Brain Gut Connection podcast. Your host, Dave Bredhauer, will guide you through how everything inside us is connected, from our brain to our heart to our gut, how they all communicate, and how important your immune system is to this entire process. The Brain Gut Connection podcast. Let us get right into today's episode.
It's time for a quick gut check, literally. Have you ever wondered if there's a direct line from your brain to your gut? Spoiler alert, there is. And we've got all of the inside scoop waiting for you in the Brain Gut Connection newsletter. Every month, we dive deep into the stuff no one else is talking about, or maybe they just don't have the guts to. We're covering the real deal behind what's happening in that brain-gut highway, unpacking the science, the myths, and the little tricks that can make you feel a whole lot better. You'll find answers to questions like, is my gut messing with my mood? Or can what I eat last night really affect my focus today? Spoiler alert, again, it can. So if you're ready to keep your brain and gut in harmony and maybe discover why they argue sometimes, head on over to www.braingutconnect.com/subscribe to sign up for the Brain Gut Connection newsletter. Your brain, your gut, and trust me on this, your whole body will thank you. Go on, give your gut a break. Welcome to the Brain Gut Connection podcast, where we dive deep into the fascinating relationship between our mental and physical health. I'm your host, Dave Bredhauer, and today we are joined by Dr. Shay Marshall, a PhD wellness coach and the creator of the transformative wellness brand, Eat to Grow Rich. Dr. Marshall is renowned for her innovative 3F effect, fruit, fasting, and fitness, which helped her lose 100 pounds as empowered countless others to take control of their health. Through her books, coaching, and holistic approach, she's dedicated to helping people develop healthy emotions, actions, and thoughts, EAT. Today, she'll share her insights on the brain-gut connection and how it ties it into her holistic philosophy for lasting wellness. Welcome, Dr. Shay. Honored to have you as my guest on today's show.
Hi, Dave. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. And for those who don't know, I messed up last time Dr. Shay was on the show, and she's grateful enough to come back and take two here. So let's kick this off by first I want to ask you, can you share your personal story that led you to develop the 3F effect, and what was the turning point in your wellness journey?
Absolutely. I would say, I think for me personally, my journey to health and wellness wasn't really a straight path. I think there are certain things that I encountered and experienced along the way that made me curious about health. But I would say I really started getting serious about it right around the time that I had some family members pass away from some illnesses. And I remember having a conversation with the physician, and the physician was basically explaining to me, because this person had recently had a stroke, that as they were trying to treat the stroke, the underlying issues were being affected by the stroke treatment. And then when they would try to treat the underlying causes, the stroke would suffer. And so I started to realize that the importance of health and the reality that you really can't get to a place to where there's almost really nothing the doctors can do. And I never really experienced that before, really understood that, because prior to that experience, you see on TV, you see on movies, people get sick, they go to the doctor fixes it, right? So you just think, of course, but that was the first time I really realized how important health was. And it was also the first time I had a personal encounter with how sickness happens. And the fact that it's not an instant thing. It's not just like, okay, you go instantly from healthy to sick. Oftentimes you'll hear people say like, oh, they were so healthy and then they just had a heart attack. And the reality is that's not actually how that happens, right? Like there are a series of events that lead up to that condition. And so that combined with me actually being in school to work on my PhD. My PhD is in biomechanical engineering, which is the study of the body like a piece of equipment. So you're looking at all of the same forces that you would look at from a mechanical engineering perspective, so statics, dynamics, thermodynamics, fluids, but then you're looking at them in relation to the body and at a molecular level. So as I am having this personal experience where I'm watching how sickness occurs, the importance of health, I'm also being educated on what fuels the body, how these nutrients and these minerals actually interact with our body to produce these functions, right? And all of these like chemical, electrical, and mechanical activities that are occurring in the body as a direct response to what we consume. So it was those two things that really happened that really turned the light bulb on for me and made me realize that, okay, I need to prioritize my health. And it's really going to start with what I eat, right? Like, what are the foods I'm eating? And I remember what was the turning factor for me was because I had tried a lot of different things prior to the lifestyle that I have now. But what was the turning factor for me was I remember I was sitting in one of my courses and we were talking about from the engineering perspective that how the body handles consumption, right? And so basically the body is very, very binary when it comes to a consumption. So either it treats the substance as a poison or it treats the substance as nutrition. There's no in between. So everything that you consume, your body automatically goes left to right, left to right. So poison, nutrition, poison, nutrition, poison, nutrition. And depending on which one of those it identifies to be, then there are certain bodily functions that come into play. And I remember just, like he said it so casually in class that I was like, oh, that's fascinating. I want to know more. So I started asking more questions. And the first question I asked him was, well, how does the body know? Like, how does the body decipher between if something is nutrition or if something is a poison? And he was like, well, at a molecular level, if it's carbon bonded, then the body perceives that as nutrition. And if it's not, then the body perceives it as poison. And I was like, oh, okay, that made sense to me, but I want to know more because I'm like, okay, because with me, I like to you have to talk to me like a child sometimes. Like I want to understand the basic of everything, right? I'm one of those kind of learners. Like I really want to break it down to its simplest components. Like, cause in my everyday life, I like to keep things simple. So I need everything to be boiled down to a simplistic level so that it's easier for me to adapt and adopt. So I said, okay, so if it's carbon bonded, then the body treats it as nutrition. Okay, so what are some examples of things that are carbon bonded? I was like, how do you know if something is carbon bonded or not? Because if you're going through the grocery store, it's not like you have a microscope and you can take, like, how do you know these things? And then he was just like, well, yeah, it's like it's not on the label, right? It doesn't it tells you potassium, fat and calories, but it does not tell you if something is carbon bonded. So I was just like, okay, well, how do you know if something is carbon bonded? And he said very plainly, if it grows in nature, it's carbon bonded. I was like, oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay. So then I said, well, what about chicken? Because I was very curious because in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, chickens grow in nature, right? And it was so funny. It's like, I still remember this response today because his response was, well, do chickens grow in nature? And I had to think about it. And I'm like, it's a very sassy answer, but it was a fair challenge to my question because it's like, well, no, yes, they exist in nature, but they don't grow from the ground. So I was like, oh, okay. But as this person is saying this to me, and with all due respect, I'm looking at this person tell me that, okay, the body only perceives poison or nutrition. But this person doesn't seem to be very healthy. So if you know this information, why are you not applying it? That was my secondary thought. Was like, okay. So then I said, you know what? I don't know if this is true or not. Like, I don't know how true this is. So I'm just gonna test it myself. So I set out to do like just 60 days. I was like, I'm only going to eat things that grow in nature. That was literally my only deciphering factor. Like, did it grow in nature? And so as that process, and this is what happens oftentimes when a lot of people transition their lifestyles, right? They pick whatever it is. Like, I'm going to do keto, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And as a subsequent process, what they're actually really doing is cutting out the processed foods. A lot of the dietary changes that we make, whether it is, carnivorous or whether it's plant-based, a lot of the benefits really come because we're cutting out the processed foods. And you start to notice the benefits of that fairly quickly. And the thing I love about it too is that the benefits exponentially increase over time. So they compound over time. It's like interest. Like, the more you do and the longer you do it, the better it gets and the easier it gets. And the more benefits that you get and things of that nature. So after getting that, yeah.
A minute here. So let's go back. So you had a friend or family member who had a health issue.
Yes.
That started you down the educational path to learning more. What was your health like at that time yourself? Were you already fit?
At the time itself, I would say, like, I didn't have, and that was the thing. That's also one of the things that I really, really encourage is like, don't wait until you get sick to make a change, because the hill you have to climb is much harder when you're working from behind the 8 ball. For me, I didn't have any, I didn't have anything critical that was happening. I made the change fairly young. It's been about 12 years now. So I didn't have anything critical as much as I just had the things that we think are normal, right? Like, for example, my menstruation wasn't a pleasant experience. Like, it was awful. You get breakouts here and there. I was overweight. I'm about 5'9", 5'10" in height. So at my highest weight, I was about 250. So I was heavier, but I never, because of my environment, I never really, everyone around me was heavy. So, and I'm from the South. So it was just a thing where it was just like, we just have some thicker women or thicker people here or whatever. So I never really noticed it. It was really, I noticed it from like an aesthetic point of view, but I never noticed it from a health point of view until my family member got sick. And what happened was they had a stroke. So this was someone that was like up and moving around day to day. And then overnight they went from like up and moving to literally being bedridden. And then it was like a 6-month decline from the stroke until passing. And it was through that process of like, also where I learned a lot about literally health and sickness, because the thing that I think some of the misconceptions sometimes is that you think people get sick and then it's a sharp, like the decline is like this. And it's really not like that. People get sick and then they get a little bit better and then get a little worse, and get a little better and get a little worse. Because as these, institutional medicines are trying to treat these different symptoms, all of these substances have side effects. And those side effects tend to aggravate other issues. And so it's not a linear progression, and it's the same thing with building your health. That's not a linear, line either. It averages out over time, but 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 3 steps forward, you get into a cadence of figuring out, and it's like a learning curve. But I realized that was the same thing with health and sickness. And I was already working on my PhD. It was just the beautiful cross section of time where I'm having this personal experience as I'm learning about these things. And I was learning about them from an engineering perspective, but because I was having this personal crisis with my family member, I couldn't think about nothing but nutrition. And it was like things were happening parallel. It's like I'm going to the hospital, having these conversations with the doctor, and then I'm having this class and my teacher's telling me, poison versus nutrition. And he's like, that's why when you eat certain meals, you get tired after, because the body treats it like a poison and it needs to shut down certain functions so that it can work on digesting and neutralizing this poison. And these things were happening parallel. And that's also why with my brand, I also like to think that I think that we're all on a journey or a path to health and wellness in some way. And I think that each step along the way, you get certain clues about like certain changes you need to make. And I think it's really up to you to pick up those clues as early as possible and then make the changes as quickly as possible. Or what I like to say is getting started as soon as possible. So it's not that you have to go from 0 to 100, but as you notice, even if you, again, haven't been diagnosed, but if you notice like, oh, I have the worst brain fog, or I get this headache all the time, or I have these aches, don't wait until the diagnosis before you start addressing it. That is a clear sign that the body is operating out of order. We're not naturally designed to have these things, right? Like the body is naturally designed to work well and optimally when you give its ideal food. And the more that you do that, then the better the body will function. But don't wait until a formal diagnosis to make a change, because by that time, again, it's just a harder hill to climb, So, yeah, I didn't, to answer your question, that was 30 minutes to answer your question, but to answer your question, there wasn't anything alarming that prompted me to change as much as it was just very clear from the things I was experiencing that I needed to make a change if I didn't also want to end up in that same position at one time.
As you started transitioning your own health, where did fruit, fasting, and fitness come in?
Yeah, so as I said, so I really initially, after having this class, like I went home that same day, I cleaned out my refrigerator, threw everything away, and I adopted eating foods only from nature. So again, that was my premise, it was very easy for me to determine what was healthy or not. Did it grow from nature? If it didn't grow from nature, okay, right? Keep it simple. That's my brain. You got to keep it simple with me, right? So, how did the fruit, fasting, and fitness come into play? Well, as I first started with the food. I think the food is the most important. And also too, a lot of my philosophy is, you are what you eat. So it's really about giving the body the proper fuel. And so I started with just doing it as a cleanse, like, because it wasn't even a cleanse. It was, as a scientist and a PhD, it was really a personal experiment, and that's honestly how I treated it. I was like, okay, we're just going to set up these controls. We have this hypothesis that the body, or this theory that the body only produces, the body only deciphers nutrition versus poison if it's carbon bonded. So let's do 60 days eating all foods that are carbon bonded and see if my body responds positively to that. Simple enough. And so I tested that out, and it became very clear. Like, I saw benefits immediately. Like within the first 3 days, I was in my PhD at the time. And so at that time, for my PhD courses, we would have maybe 1 or 2 lectures a day, but each lecture would be 4 hours minimum. So we're talking not labs, 4-hour lectures. So this is going into a class and learning theorems and breaking them down for 4 hours. So you're good for about the first hour. And then it's a very slow decline until I can't process any more information, right? I noticed within 3 days that was gone. I was sharp the entire class. Even to the point to where I was reminding the professor of things, or it dramatically improved within 3 days. I didn't have that brain fog. I also didn't get that afternoon slump anymore. It just all went away. My sleep improved. My skin instantly improved. Within 7 days, I had lost, I think, 10 pounds, just easy. And I was eating a ton of food. I wasn't nibbling. Because I had no idea. So I was like, I'm just going to eat when I'm hungry, and I'm going to eat till I'm full. So I kept it very simple. I still keep it very simple. So it was lots of fruit, lots of smoothies, salads, anything that grew from nature. I kept it in its natural form, and I ate it. And I ate as much as I wanted to. Pineapples, oranges, it didn't matter. Tomatoes, cucumbers, everything. So very early on, I noticed that what I liked about it is that I could eat. It felt like I could eat whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. I didn't have to be on some type of I didn't feel like I had to calorie restrict, which I had tried before, which I really don't like. The idea of too complex for me. I keep it simple. So very quickly, I noticed that all of the challenges that I had with other diets or lifestyle changes, This one was just the easiest, and I felt the best pretty quickly. And so what was supposed to be like a 60-day experiment, by day, I think it was like day 11 or 12, I was just like, I'm not going back, because why would I go back? It's crazy. I'm losing so much weight, like to the point to where it's like, I lost 60 pounds in like 3 months without working out, like without having some crazy workout schedule. You know, I went walking a couple times. It was very cute. Like it's nothing like what I do today. It was literally, you know, a walk, maybe 30 minutes on the elliptical, and that's it. And we're talking 2 or 3 times a week, because I was also in my PhD and I was working. I didn't even have the time like that. So I kept it very simple. So that was me getting started and me learning how important food was. And just by changing my food and keeping it based in nature, I could lose so much weight so quickly. Like it was just it felt very effortless. And it was a joke too, because it was a joke amongst my friends, because I was losing weight so quickly that every time I would go down a pant size, in 2 weeks that it would just be baggy again. So I just got used to like walking around in baggy clothes. So finally my body just like kind of found its equilibrium.
Sure.
So that was me learning the importance of food. And I say fruit, and I emphasize fruit because fruit is from nature, but also there are so many different types of fruit, right? We typically tend to think about fruits as being the sweet fruits, right? Like pineapples, oranges, but there are a lot of savory fruit. So cucumbers, tomatoes, peppers, squash, beans, nuts, all of those are fruit. From the botanical perspective, right? So it's a flower that grows, or a plant that grows and produces a flower. That flower has seeds. The blossom itself is the thing that we consume. And so that makes it a fruit. So there are okra is a fruit. There are lots of different fruits out there. And we explain that in the book. We give different recipes. We give all the different types of fruits. And there are also there are like 20,000 different varieties of types of fruits. And then within those different varieties, there are varieties within the varieties, right? So if you think about grapes, for example, and I live in Europe. So we're talking, if you go between France and Italy, there are so many different variations of grapes. There are more grapes. And Spain, there are more grapes than you can keep up with, right? It's the same thing with tomato varieties and squashes. I mean, the bounty is endless. And that was also what I liked about it, was just by keeping it simple and saying, okay, did it grow in nature or not? I was just like, oh, there's so many different things I can eat. There's so many different ways I can combine this. I can do savory, I can do sweet, I can do smoothies, I can do juices, I can do salads, I can do rolls, I can do so many different things. So I never felt limited. Whereas like when I had tried other things before, it was like, oh, I can only eat these 3, or only eat these 3 meats, or only eat brown rice and not white rice. It was just, again, too complex for me, so keep it simple.
So you're eating. At what point in time did you decide to try fasting?
So when I lost the initial weight, I lost 60 pounds very quickly. Like I said, less than 3 months. 3 months is probably an exaggeration. I'm going to say 2.5, but within 3 months, I lost 60 pounds. And then the weight started it was still coming off, but it was coming off slower. And the thing about health and wellness, I find, is that like once you get started and you find what works for you, you're good to go. And so once I started seeing how healthy I could get, I just wanted to challenge myself to get healthier and healthier. And so that's when I started adapting the fasting with intermittent fasting. So I started very easily. I did 16-8. So I had like an 8-hour eating window. And then I realized that had a lot of other benefits, not just with the weight loss. It was also improving my digestion. My sleep was improving, all different types of things. And the weight was coming off faster. So I started experimenting with that. And then again, the body adapts over time. So then I started experimenting with different fasting windows. And as I started the fasting, I also started combining the fitness. And prior to that, I had tried each one of those, but never all together. Right. So even when I was eating everything, I experimented with intermittent fasting. I experimented with fitness, right? I've been experimenting with fitness my whole life. Like I've always, even when I carried some weight, I still played sports. I was still somewhat active. So I've always had fitness somewhere in there. But it was when I combined the three that I realized how powerful this is, because we're talking fast results quickly. Like when you combine eating foods from nature, that's your fruit. And again, in the book, we have levels. So, because I also understand that not everyone is going for gold. That's how I speak about it with my clients, right? Like, not everyone is going for gold. Some people are really just happy to show up to the Olympics, right? They don't care what they walk away with. So, we offer in the book flexibility, because some people may only want to do fruit for breakfast. That is my number one advice, actually, for all people. No matter what you eat, I think that you should keep your breakfast as simple and light and easily digestible and hydrating as possible. And that is really, if you're just understanding how the body operates and how much work it does when it sleeps. When you wake up first thing in the morning, or your first meal of the day as you break your fast, be kind to your body and give it something easy to digest. So I always recommend fruit, because fruit is the easiest digesting food. It's the quickest eliminating food. It is the most hydrating. And also, you're giving your brain that surge of vitamins. You're giving your body those surge of vitamins so early in the morning. So it's really a good get up and go. But you can flex. The plan is flexible. So there's beginner, intermediate, and advanced. And that is really looking at, okay, if you say there are 3 meals a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, how many of those meals do you want to make fruit-based or nature-based? And then it's the same thing with the fitness, same thing with the fasting, because I initially started with intermittent fasting, but there are various ranges of fasting, right? So you have your 18-6, you have your 16-8, which is your fasting for 16 hours, eating within an 8-hour window. Typically people do like 10 to 6, 12 to 8. But then you also have 1 meal a day, which is an option. You have ADF, which is alternate day fasting, which is, I really recommend having a more advanced fasting protocol if you have a more beginner level in terms of your diet, because as you eat heavier, harder to digest foods, you want to give your body a longer time to digest them in order to especially if your goal is weight loss, then you need to give your body time to break down the food before you give it more food. So, but we speak about that in the book. There are different fasting protocols that you can adapt. And the same thing with fitness. And also, one of the key things that I learned through my experience, but also through my education, was there are different fitness modalities, and they all impact the body, brain, and spirit differently. And so with fitness and my journey, like I said, I initially started out very simple, few walks here and there, but mostly cardio, because I didn't know what I was doing. And if I did do weights, I would get on the machines, but I didn't have a plan. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just, figuring it out. But as I got fitter, as I started losing more weight, you do get more confident in the gym. You get in better shape, and you feel better. You can do different things. So as my health started to improve, I started to experiment with different fitness modalities. And the science also support this, which we explain in the book, but also through my personal experience, I realized that if you are going to prioritize any type of exercise, the best exercise to prioritize is strength training. Because as you are developing muscle, there are so many additional benefits to that. And also from a present day health standpoint, but also from a longevity. So as you age, it's important for us to maintain a healthy muscle mass. And I like to think about weightlifting as a buy one, get one free deal, because the beauty of weightlifting is that as you have that initial workout, you burn calories, but your body burns calories for longer with the strength training exercise. And it also, not only do you buy one, get one free today, you also get buy one free in the future, because as you do more strength training and you increase your muscle mass, your body naturally burns more fat the more muscle mass you have. And so it just offers so many benefits. So I even tell my clients, I coach them, even at a beginner level, you should have some form of strength training, right? And maybe right now you're just at a place where all you can do is walk. So get you some ankle weights and get you some wrist weights and some ankle weights so that you can add some resistance into your cardio. So no matter what type of exercise you're doing, whether it's mobility exercises or stretching, so you're looking at your yoga and things of that nature, add some weight. If you're doing cardio, walking, things of that, add some resistance training. A good cardio exercise machine that is a combination of cardio and resistance is the Stairmaster. That's an amazing piece of equipment if you want to combine those two. But I would say that if you are looking to prioritize any type of movement, make sure that you prioritize your strength training. You'll get very far. You'll see the benefits more quickly. And also, a good thing to remember is that your cardio exercises are going to kind of reduce your mass, but your strength training is going to give you shape. So that is what's going to define your body in certain areas and round out certain areas. And so if you have a desired physique in mind, you really need to incorporate strength training so that you can build that physique of your journey, which is possible. And that's also one message that I really want to clearly articulate, is that I think that sometimes we try things and they don't work and then we get discouraged, or we see certain things on TV or on social media and we think, like, I could never get there. And the truth is, you truly can. You just have to find what works for you, because no one gets there overnight. And so you have to find a plan that you can adapt and adopt for the long term. Anything that is fad or trendy isn't going to serve you long term. And so what happens is you kind of build up this fear because you try things, you get a little results, but you can't keep up that process or that program. And then you end up back to where you started from, or even worse. So you have to, and that's what I like about the 3F effect, is that with fruit fasting and fitness, as long as you have some form of those components into your health and wellness plan, you will see the results. And the goal is always long-term. So you can stay or start at a beginning level, and as long as you're still getting your results consistently, you can stay there. It just may take you a little longer to get your dream physique. But if you want to go faster, then you got to go harder. And that's really just the nature of physics. That's just how it goes. So yeah, that's the plan.
So you're eating, you're fasting, and you're working out, and then you introduced your flush the junk detoxification.
Yes.
How did that come about? And at what point in time did you recognize that what you were doing was benefiting the gut?
Oh, that's a great question. I recognized pretty quickly what I was doing was benefiting the gut. Because even so, again, I think one of the things that I see often, or a lot of times when clients, when I'm speaking to my clients, speaking to my patients, they often sometimes think like that there are so many things that we normalize, right? So we normalize bloat after a meal. We just think, oh, I just get bloated when I eat certain foods. Or we normalize stomach pain. Yeah, I know I get a cramp here. And those are very clear telltale signs that the food that you're eating, your body is not able to digest. And that's why you're having that reaction, because that is not a natural reaction. So when you are making this change and you're transitioning to non-processed foods from nature, it is going to stir up and loosen up some of that gunk that is stuck in your stomach, right? Because when you're eating foods that are heavily processed, they are full of preservatives and they are full of chemicals to keep them shelf stable. And another word for that is saying they are designed to not decompose. And so you have to understand that if you are eating food that are designed to not decompose, just because you chewed it up doesn't mean that it's going to magically make its way throughout the system. Oftentimes, the foods that we are carrying around with us, the residue and the leftovers of the foods that we've eaten over the years. And that is what causes an upset stomach. And that is what causes your microbiome to be out of whack, and because you're eating these foods that the body doesn't perceive as nutrition. And so it tries to neutralize it as best that it can. And so when we are gaining weight, you got to understand that weight gain is a result, that is a biological response to the body trying to neutralize toxins. So what it does is it stores it in the fat cells to keep it from causing a mass reaction. And then what happens is that over period, how sickness develops is that over periods of time, that the body can only do so much and only handle so much, and then you start feeling the symptoms and the effects, right? So it's like the first time you ever ate processed foods, you probably didn't have the same reaction that you have after 30 years of eating processed foods. Now, there are some people now who have all types of gut issues, all type of Crohn's disease, all type of intestinal problems that are a direct result of the food that we're eating. And so as you are switching over, right, and you're eating these foods that do quickly digest, and you're eating these foods that are full of enzymes, which also help to clean out the colon, you are flushing toxins back into your bloodstream as that process. And so where Flush the Junk came into play was one of the things that we noticed was that as people were transitioning, they were having what we call detox symptoms, right? And we realized that the body was actually detoxing faster than it could push the waste out. And so we started looking at different modalities and different practices. And then if you look at the Garrison therapy, they were a set of doctors. I believe their practice still exists, but they were a set of doctors who were successful in curing cancer through switching people to a nature-based diet. And one of the things that they also document and noticed was that for patients that were very sick, as they were transitioning their diet, they also needed to do enemas or internal cleansing to help support the body in eliminating that waste. And that is still rings true today. And the data supports that. And also, not just the data and the science, but also this is a holistic practice that has really been going on since the beginning of time. And so Flush the Book is really a comprehensive guide to enemas and detoxification, because as you're transitioning, you need to have some type of internal cleansing process or internal cleansing protocol that can help the body not have such severe detox symptoms. So that's really the primary goal, is to aid the body in detoxification, so that as you are transitioning to a healthier practice, you don't have so many severe detox symptoms. Because that's also a thing that people note commonly is, I get headaches, or I had a rash, or I had this breakout. And it's that once you start to understand how sickness develops, healing is simply just the undoing of that, right? So sickness develops. It is the accumulation of toxins over time, right? You don't instantly get sick. You don't go from being healthy to immediately what it is, unless you have a massive toxic overload, right? But how most people develop sickness, it is literally microdosing poison over a period of time. And then as the body gets weakened by that, it stores as much as it can. It tries to rob nutrients and healthy cells from where it can. But after a while, there's really nothing left it can do. The sickness ends up taking over the body. And so as you start reversing that process by eating natural food, you have to flush those toxins back out because they're stuck inside. And so you will have some detox symptoms as a result of flushing those toxins out. But with a dedicated detox plan and with internal cleansing, you can get ahead of that. And that's what I like to do is, through my own experience and my 12 years of coaching, I realized that we are all facing similar hurdles along the way. And so my plan is really about how do we get ahead of that? So it's more of a proactive approach as opposed to a reactive approach, but also an approach that can be adaptable depending the circumstance or no matter where you're at.
You mentioned holistic wellness. What are some misconceptions that you've seen in your practice that people have about that?
I think some common misconceptions. I think one of the funniest things to me sometimes is that people have their own definition of what holistic is. And so even when you say holistic wellness, sometimes people think, it's like all crystals and incense and things of that nature. But holistic for me is really about mind, body, and spirit. And the reason that's important is because you are mind, body, and spirit. And so oftentimes when we are making changes or we want a different reality, we only think about physically what we need to do. We never think about, from a mental or spiritual perspective, what are the things that we also need to participate in order to realize this healthier future. And so when we look at holistic wellness, my practice really says, okay, yes, we know we want changed behavior, but we also have to address the emotional, mental, and spiritual contributing factors that are providing as the impetus for our behavior. Because oftentimes, right, we don't connect that there is an emotional, oftentimes our behavior is a response to our emotions or our thoughts. We felt away, we thought away, and then we behaved away. And so oftentimes when we look at getting healthy, people just change behavior. Okay, I'm just gonna eat healthier. And it's like, well, you're eating how you're eating now, and there's a reason why you're okay with that or you're participating in those behaviors. So if you just change behavior, but you don't identify the emotional triggers that lead to your behaviors, and you don't learn to adapt a different mindset that better suit this change of behavior, then you're going to make this change for a short period of time and you're going to go back to your old self because now you're operating out of alignment. Your emotions and thoughts are leading you in one direction, and your actions are trying to lead you somewhere else. And then we wonder why we can't stick to a plan for more than 12 days. You have to operate mind, body, and spirit, and you have to address the two. So even with the 3F effect, which is my framework for how to get healthy and how to lose weight quickly. Even with the 3F effect, as we talk about the benefits of fruit, fasting, and fitness, we also talk about not just the physical effects and how they support quick weight loss, but also what are the spiritual effects of living a life and eating food that are closer to nature and grown by God, right? Like, what does that do to your spiritual health? What does it do to your mental health, right? So what about the fresh availability of nutrients and minerals that are actually responsible for how our brain functions, right? So our happy hormones, being dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphin, how are they responding to the foods that we eat, right? So when you give your body these natural foods that are full of all of this good mineral and nutrients, they actually allow those releases of hormones to happen easier. So then you start to realize the benefits of the mind over time. It's the same thing with strength training. Strength training also is a metabolic function that releases endorphins. That's why you talk about, a lot of people that work out consistently always feel great when they leave the gym. You go in feeling awful. You had the worst day at work, and then you leave the gym, and it's like it's all good. It's a natural release of our happy hormones. So the 3F effect really looks at the holistic perspective of health and wellness. And it is centered around the premise of weight loss because, again, weight loss is a natural byproduct of getting healthier. But the underlying foundation is no matter where you are in life and no matter what you're striving for, you should have some healthy plan. And if you want the best bang for your buck, then you're going to want to have some level of fruit, fasting, and fitness as part of your plan. There are many people that even follow a carnivore diet, and after a while, they always add some level of fruit back into the diet, right? I saw something funny on Instagram the other day. The guy was saying that he made a carnivore salad, but the base of the salad was spaghetti squash. And I'm like, that's a fruit. It's a low glycemic fruit that doesn't spike your blood pressure, so it's good to support those type of lifestyles. But it's still a fruit. So no matter what your overall arching plan is, right, you need to have some level of nature-based foods as part of the core of your diet, or at least some of your meals, because those are the foods that are going to give your body nutrients. That's where nutrition comes from. The word nutrition, the idea of having nutrition and eating nutritious foods is that those foods need to provide bioavailable nutrients. A lot of things have nutrients, but they need to be bioavailable, meaning the body can absorb them. The body can easily recognize that this is something that I want to assimilate into my body. And that's the difference between poison and nutrition. The body looks at nutrition as things it wants to assimilate. The body looks at poison as things it wants to either try to get rid of or neutralize as quickly as possible. And so even if you are ever in doubt about what food is good for you or not, just really learn to sit with yourself and observe how your body and your mind and your spirit responds to these different food choices. So people say, oh, my digestion is fine, but I always feel angry after I eat certain things, or I always feel very aggressive. Is that the behavior that's going to be suitable for you? Because there are some people who need to be aggressive as part of their lifestyle. That's why my plan is not a one size fits all. But if you don't want that extra aggression and you're not able to use that and channel that, well, maybe you need to eat less of those foods that trigger that animalistic kind of response. So it's just about finding a plan that suits you, that's suitable for where you are today, and that you can grow with as you continue to grow healthier and healthier.
So let's tie all this together here. So we've got fruit, we've got fasting, we've got fitness, we have detoxification, then we have the mind, body, spirit. So if I was a new client to walk in your door, I feel I would be overwhelmed having all this thrown at me at once. So I'm guessing you break it down step by step. Can you quickly go over how you would do that?
Absolutely. So typically when people come to me, they usually come to me with a problem. And it may be something physical or it might just be situational. Because again, with a holistic practice, the thing that we have to realize is that how we're showing up is contributing to the things that we're experiencing. So if we want a different experience of life, then we have to look at what about our emotions, actions, and thoughts do we need to change. So typically when people come in to me, I have designed my own assessment algorithm. So we'll come in, we'll do a consultation. I'll ask you a series of questions and I'll have my own skin that will come out and tell me where you are energetically, mind, body, and spirit. And then based on that, we put together a plan. So people come to me for different reasons. Sometimes people come to me solely for a detox plan. Sometimes people come to me solely for a nutritional plan. And sometimes people just come to me, they're just drawn to me and then we work on them. But regardless of whatever it is, I'm going to give you some level of practices that you need to adapt to address the emotions, the actions, and thoughts that are going to better align you for whatever your desired end state is, based on what you are telling me you desire and what your assessment is going to tell me. Your assessment is going to tell me where you are energetically, mind, body, and spirit. And based on that, I'm going to know the type of foods that you should consume more of, because that's also something that's very important. And it's so simple, but it's so powerful. The colors of the food trigger different responses in the body, right? And they align to different centers in the body. So depending on where you're showing up energetically, I may be able to say, okay, you need to eat more red foods. And we'll create a meal plan that says, okay, we're going to infuse more red foods into your meal plan in this way. And then based on, for example, what your health and wellness goals are, we'll have some level of fruit, fasting, and fitness that is part of your Eat to Grow Rich plan. So we'll either put together a specific plan that is fruit, fasting, and fitness, or we put together a specific Eat to Grow Rich, which is the more holistic, that looks at these are the emotions, these are our emotional practices that we're going to adapt. These are our thinking processes, this is how we're going to handle our thoughts. Because that's also another important thing is having a thought and having an emotion isn't something that we need to respond to as either good or bad. It's really either constructive or destructive. Are these things helping you build towards the life that you want, or are they destroying the life that you want? It's very simple. So as we start to look at and we observe our emotions and we observe our thoughts and we learn to choose the ones that are constructive, the ones that lead us and build us to this richer, more healthy future that we desire. And so it seems overwhelming, especially if this is your first time hearing this information. But as we put together a plan, the plan has to be feasible and actionable if you want to get results. And so that's why we just break it down and then we give you a plan to operate from. And then usually I have weekly sessions or bi-weekly sessions with my clients as we kind of move them along. And the beauty I like about it is that you really, typically, I see my clients for about, I would say as they go on, I see them less and less. So I probably see them as like in the first 6 to 8 weeks is when people need the most support. But typically, people adapt pretty quickly, and then our sessions space out further and further, because at this point we're really just checking in, making it call it a check and adjust. We're just checking in and making minor adjustments and supporting you along your way till you reach your goals.
So I'm guessing that we just covered your Eat to Grow Rich program,
Mm-hmm.
more or less.
Yeah.
Anything extra you want to add to that?
I would say just, first I want to say that thank you for having me. I've had a pleasure having this conversation for the second time, and I enjoyed it both times. So thank you. But things I want to leave people with are, if you would like to contact me directly, you can reach out to me at my email. My email is at Dr. Shay, Shay, at eat2growrich.com. And that is the number 2. So EAT, the number 2, growrich.com. You can also find me across all social medias under the same handle, eat, the number 2, and grow rich. So you can find me on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. I would love to connect. Please add me. Also, too, if you're interested in purchasing any of my books, whether that is the 3F Effect, which is how to lose weight quickly, recruit fasting and fitness, or Flush the Junk, which is a comprehensive guide to enemas and detoxification, you can find both of them as virtual books on my website, www.eat2growrich.com. Again, that is the number 2. And you can also find them for available in paperback, hardback, and Kindle on Amazon. So I'm not hard to find if you're looking for me. But yeah.
Well, before we go, what's next on your journey? Do you have any new books, programs coming out?
I do have a new book that I am working on for the winter. And it is looking at specifically how to address childhood traumas as an adult. Yeah, it's a good one too. So I am working on that. That is my next release. But right now we just published the 3F Effect in August. And so right now I'm trying to spread the word and get the word out there about the book and get people excited and get people energized. It is super effective. I actually just received an email yesterday from someone telling me that they lost 17 pounds in a month after having not been able to lose weight for so long. And they're not even at advanced level. They're just making the beginner changes and already lost 17 pounds. And that was very motivating. So, and very encouraging. So I am, just trying to get the word out there. I know it can be helpful. It helped me lose over 110 pounds at this point. I think today I sit somewhere at like 140. And it only seems like a drastic change when you look at the full picture, but it was literally one step at a time. And so I know it's possible. I know that you can reach your goals, even if you feel like you can't. It is possible, but it does start and end with you. And so, yeah, when you're ready, let's go.
Well, Dr. Shay, I want to thank you for showing up for the show. It's been a real pleasure to interview you twice. I'm anxious to hear more about your book on childhood trauma. So with that, I'll say goodbye to our audience for the day. Thanks very much for showing up, and we'll be in touch soon. Bye for now. If you'd like to reach out to Dr. Shay Marshall, PhD, wellness coach, and published author, you can get in touch with her at Dr. Shay at eat2growrich.com or her website, www.eat2growrich.com. Please do reach out to her. She's there to help.
We really hope you enjoyed this episode of the Brain Gut Connection podcast. Stay connected with us directly through www.braingutconnect.com. You can also join the discussion on Instagram at Brain Gut Connection and YouTube. If you would like to speak with us, please send us an email to dave@braingutconnect.com. And as always, thank you for listening. This concludes the most thought-provoking portion of your day. Until next time, stay happy, healthy, and educated.